And we are live and welcome, friends and fellow Damons. And my guest this evening is Mr. Isaac Sian. He is a Tai Chi master, a life coach, a lover of Persian classical music, and he's a podcaster, YouTuber, and TikToker. Welcome, Isaac. And would you like to tell people where they can find you in the future?
Thank you. My pleasure. Glad to be here. My website is greatnessglory.com. All of my social media channels and YouTube and everything else is also listed there. You can also find resources for my book, Art of Balance, which we can talk about later. And then everything is on the website. You can find it there.
Awesome. Well, I'm so glad we're having a chance to talk here again. For anyone who didn't know, I came on Isaac's podcast a little while ago, and we had a great conversation there. So we're continuing it from the other side of the looking glass, so to speak. And as he said, he's got a new book called Art of Balance: Guidelines on Achieving Holistic Well-Being and Happiness. I've got to read a little bit of it and look through it, and there's a lot of really good material in here, very extensive. So I guess I'll ask a broad question about this. So why did you feel a need to write this book? Is there a calling or something that inspired you to do this?
Yes, good question. The need for creating a balance on all levels of our being, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, and in other external dimensions of life, like people talk about like work-life balance, balance in relationships, and etc. It's something that I see is increasing with the modern time. I noticed this in myself and in everybody's life. I think researchers said that in like 10 years or so, the stress and the fast pacing changes in the society would be so much that if a person, actually this part I'm adding, is not learning to create that balance in their mind with different natural approaches and meditation and such, majority of population will need to be on some sort of chemical or antidepressant or something just to keep their mental balance. So I see a significant need at this time for people to understand that not only for keeping your mental balance and being okay and happy, we need to create this balance, follow these principles, but also as a second part of my book, if you're a spiritual seeker or any type of person that is looking for expanding yourself to more than just, like just eating and sleeping, if you want to expand your life and experience anything, even professional career, your passions, without that foundation, which is balance, that's almost impossible because balance is a foundation for everything. Just to keep it short, I mentioned this in my book also, that in nature, everything is between the two extremes. Like if our body gets too cold, it's a problem. If it gets too hot, it's a problem. If your blood sugar is too high, if it's too low, it's a problem, and everything else. And I talk extensively about different places where balance really applies to life, which is really everything, even in relationships, even in taking care of your children. Like sometimes too much attention and helicopter parenting is bad. Sometimes not giving attention is bad. And then in the material and spiritual balance and all those aspects, which is there's a lot which I went through on the book talking about how to create balance in all those aspects.
one thing it kind of reminded me of was when I was reading through it is Aristotle. And I don't know if that was an influence for you or not, but Aristotle, like famously, like in Nicomachean Ethics, like talks about this virtue to be found in a middle road between extremes. And as I was reading, I kind of got that feeling like that. So was any of that an influence?
To be honest, not directly. I like them very much, both of them. Actually, I studied them a little bit, but I think this came to me mostly really intuitively, but also from the influence of the Eastern sciences, including Ayurveda, the most holistic science of medicine, as well as some shamanic principles.
Interesting. So one line that you have here, I'm gonna quote it because this was so profound for me, and it has to do with this idea of balance in life, where you say, in the same way in life, if you are not balanced, you'll experience tension. Tensions multiply and turn into psychological and physical imbalances that we call disease. The word disease reminds us that sicknesses are created by dis-ease or a lack of ease. I thought that that was very, very profound because this is something that I've kind of learned in my meditation pursuits, is to be aware of tension, to find tensions, and that as I return, every time I return, I can always find new tensions within the body. Can you talk a little bit about how you feel about the importance of that?
For sure, with the advancement of knowledge and growth of collective consciousness, we are coming more to understanding that really majority of the disease are created by our thoughts. Well, all the traditional systems of medicine, such as Ayurveda, talk about this. For example, Ayurveda, there is a famous quote that they believe if you want to see your past mind or the condition of your past thoughts, or if you want to look at somebody and see what was the condition of their thoughts, what kind of thoughts they had, look at their body today. And if you want to know how would their body, their health look like in future, look at their mind today. Because in Eastern systems, in yoga and in all of them, they basically believe that not only health, but in some way the whole universe is manifestation of thought. So the thoughts that we exercise in our mind, they create our reality moment to moment. So the modern medicine also, they're gradually starting to accept that, oh yeah, it's not all chemicals, it's like mind can definitely affect the body. And there's so much data out there about all these things which you can read. For example, Dr. Joe Dispenza has a tremendous amount of work on this, the famous book The Placebo Effect. He goes over this in a fascinating way with hundreds of examples that how your thoughts can kill you or heal you actually. So it's a very obvious thing today, and the science of yoga says, as well as like Tai Chi, which I practice, that if you keep your mind in a equanimous state and relaxed, your body will become also relaxed, and health is inevitable. So there's so much to study about it for people who are interested, but that's a very obvious fact today.
Yeah. So let's delve into that a little bit more. As far as like modern medicine, you say some modern medicine is coming around to seeing this. Overall, how would you rate modern medicine, though? Do you think it's something that someone could trust what their doctor is telling them, or is in this modern environment today, do we need to look beyond that for health?
In some ways, I think we need a combination of both, but I think more and more people are coming to this understanding that the approach of the modern medicine to body, to human being is very, we can say, wrong, for the lack of better word. And because modern medicine looks at the body mechanically, like if there is an issue in the liver, they just want to like do something with the liver to fix it or take it out or whatever. While in traditional medicine, they look at every aspect, like how your mind is affecting your body or liver, how your diet is affecting, which modern medicine barely even talks about diet, except for a few places like your cholesterol is high, blah, blah, blah. So diet, environment, your relationship, your many things that actually is very related to my book, Art of Balance, creating those balance points in many aspects. So there's a lot to talk about modern medicine, the difference of chemically treating things and using herbs and other more holistic and natural methods. And everybody knows that there's a lot of side effects with the synthetic drugs and so on, which is, again, if I want to talk about that, that's going to be like 10 podcasts.
No, it's a huge subject. I think we probably talked about it on the last time, and I talk about it a lot too. That because I went through this, and as we probably discussed before, I had ulcerative colitis at one point, and so I was on lots of medication. I basically went through the medical system, only to eventually, through experiencing a kind of awakening from this more continued meditation practice and pursuit of inner balance and inner being, that a lot of the stuff that I was hearing from the medical establishment was just wrong, if not uninformed. Like you say, it's like they miss out on they either they don't really understand the cause of things, they misdiagnose the causality of things and just focus on the symptom and what can we do to make this symptom go away or cover it up. And
Yeah.
typically drugs is just all they can. Drugs or surgery are the only things that they really
Yeah,
have.
even I think in my book I mentioned this. In some of the ancient systems of medicine, the approach was to prevent the disease, not to just wait so something goes wrong and they try to fix it. I even heard, I think it was in ancient China, that the doctors used to get paid to keep you healthy, and if you stop being healthy, you would stop paying them. That's the right approach to have, because Hippocrates, I think he said, I love this quote. He said, if you are not your own doctor, you are a fool. And this is so profound for me because people, they don't want to take care of their lifestyle, their sleep, their diet, their other stuff, and so many things. They don't want to educate themselves. And unfortunately, the school system doesn't educate people about these things. And then they just want to pop up a pill and fix things. It's never going to work. So we need to work on educating ourselves by reading various sources, especially diet and lifestyle, and then work on fixing things. Another thing that I wanted to mention is that when you meditate a lot and you become so sensitive and conscious, aware about what happens in your body and mind, you can clearly see that your mind is affecting your body. I don't know, for a lot of people, it's not something they can develop in a month or so, but with many years of practices, I can see right now that one quick thought that is passing through my mind or some negative emotion is definitely affecting some part of my body in a negative way. So this repetition of the negative thoughts and emotions over months, years, they one day they will cause damage to that organ. Even in Chinese medicine, there is a famous concept that this emotion is related to this organ, like anger is related to liver and so on. And I see that in all systems of medicine, even in the Unani medicine, the traditional Persian Middle Eastern medicine, and Ayurveda, and many other types of medicine. So we cannot really ignore that, and we cannot expect to stay healthy if we don't pay attention and don't educate ourselves and then expect some doctor to fix us.
Absolutely. When you say, you have to be your own doctor, I think that your book really brings that out, because your book isn't just about the spiritual part of it. I mean, our culture has kind of like separated these two things, like personal health and everything is like over in this camp, and then spiritualism is over in this camp. And that's probably a problem with the West, right? It's like because at some point in the past we we outsourced our spirituality to experts like priests and stuff like that. And so we're not used to taking care of any of these things ourselves, but really we have to do all of it ourselves. And the reality is that no one's going to do it for you, at least not as good as with as much care as you will for yourself. This is what I like about your book, is that you're giving really specific things to look at to start making this journey towards reclaiming that responsibility for yourself.
Yes.
So let's talk about food. You spend some time talking about food in there. What's your opinion on diet?
Well, the summary of what I put about food in my book is that it's very difficult for most people to spend hundreds of hours regularly read about diet and principles of medicine and health and body and stuff like that. And you see every year, every 2 years, there's a new opinion about what food is good, what food is bad. Something 5 years ago, the doctors and majority, they said, oh, this is a very healthy thing to do. Now they say, no, it's not healthy. Don't do it. Do this instead. Then they keep changing their opinions. And then you go and read about the various diets, so many diets out there, like hundreds, like ketogenic diet, Atkins diet, low fat, blah, blah, so many diets. And then you'll be confused, like which one is good? So I said in my book that the best thing to do is to work on developing your intuition, your body intuition, which means being able to really receive those signals from your body, because your body clearly is telling you what is good, what is bad for it. But we become modernized and disconnected from nature. And even pets and animals, especially the ones in nature, they clearly know what's good, what's bad for them. You barely see an animal in nature gets poisoned by plant or something, right? Because they know, they just, the sense of smell, the way that they look, and that intuition, they just feel it, and the body tells them, do it, don't do it. So I go over things in the book briefly on how to start exercising your body intuition to be able to receive and respond to those signals and create that balance. Otherwise, I also went over some major things about diet that, other than the intuitive part, which you need to kind of develop for yourself, if you follow those things, I think it creates a real difference in our lives. Some things that even recently a lot of scientists and doctors are publicly talking about. One of them being the horrible nature of seed oils, which is the type of oil that 99% of Americans probably consume. And there is no restaurant except less than 1% right now, and they're growing, luckily, that don't use seed oil, which is horrible. And there are books written on this. There's a lot of data out there that the things that seed oil does to you, it's horrible. Like if you consume those type of oils on a daily basis, you create issues. And then sugar, and like I gave like alternative sweeteners and things like that. Those are a few principles I can say that I see. It can be contained in a small book, and people if change it, it creates a huge difference. Or like a couple of other things which can create a huge difference is, one is being more active, because one reason for a lot of disease is that as modern human beings we are not moving enough like before. And if we change that, I can say maybe more than 50% of this disease in the world might disappear. And lastly, I also talked about restricting your eating, like reducing your meals to 2, maximum 3 times a day, and not eating in between, something which has been extensively discussed in all systems of medicine. Even a lot of data that is today shows us that constantly eating is one of the worst thing we can do to ourselves. It's actually ages us, and it prevents our body to detox, and so many other things happen. Even psychological health can be affected by eating regularly. I mean, binge eating all the time, and especially if it's like just processed junk and potato chips and things like that.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you on everything that you said. Seed oils are very evil, very bad. Um, I've been off seed oils for a few years now, but I remember that. So, my whole process of dialing in my diet had to do with my meditation practice and all these things. And really, I feel developing that kind of body sensitivity that you're talking about that's really needed, to where you start to get this sort of guidance about what kinds of foods are right from you, and just an almost immediate awareness as the food enters your body, whether it's good or bad. And when I got to the point where I'd eliminated all these different foods out of my diet and things were like pretty good, but the last thing was when I got hip to seed oils, and I realized I was still getting some sugar from nuts that I was eating. I cut out that, and I cut out the seed oils. And it's like the last vestiges of, because I was getting arthritis, another thing that I had going on with my autoimmune problems. I had arthritis. I was getting to where I couldn't play the guitar anymore. And it was breaking my heart because I'm a musician, right? And I know you are too. I want to talk about that. But as I left behind the seed oils and the sugar, the last bit of arthritis cleared up just like that. And I realized no one gets this. It's the last thing when I talk to other people about this, or I'm like, I can't, oh no, I'm not going to eat at that restaurant because of seed oils. I mean, so people just think you're crazy. What are you talking about? What, vegetable oil? Everyone knows vegetable oil is good for you and better than better than animal fat and everything. And it's like we're on the cusp, I think, of an awareness about it. Like you said, it's all restaurants. All of them are guilty. I know maybe one restaurant that has talked about seed oils, but it's so like prevalent in the culture still. And still, you walk into a grocery store, you get to the seed oil it's the breakfast cereal section at the supermarket, right?
Yes.
It's like the worst thing for you, and it's a whole aisle of all this sugar. And then you get to the in the baking section, of all the stuff in the baking section, there's this wall of different kinds of seed oil. It's insane how much there is of it. And that's why they're pushing it, is because then there's so much of it, because it's so cheap for them to make it. And people just, ding. I mean, something in the 70s, there was this campaign to convince everyone that animal fats were bad and you need to switch over to this vegetable oil and stuff and cook with that. And it just like has been used in everything. So I'm preaching about that a little bit, but I think that message that you're given there, that can't be underestimated. And with anyone I know who's cut out seed oils, everyone just immediately becomes aware that it was making them unhealthy all the while. So that's good. You also talk about the balance of and this is connected to me in my opinion also. And you touched on it a little bit about rest and sleep. How important is it to have that in line?
The balance that I talk about, I think, is called the rest activity balance. Well, sleep is not the only way to rest, but that's the most common way that we use. There are definitely ways that you can rest and get even more rest than the one that you get from sleep. That's how a lot of yogis and people who are in mysticism and yogic practices and things like that, they know how to deeply relax their body. So in absence of that, sleep is definitely crucial. But the principle that I talk about is that you need to create a balance between how much you rest and how much you have activities. Obviously, I think most of today's world, they're kind of tilting towards not having enough activity. And I definitely have noticed this in my own system over and over again. If I'm like, inactive, even in a day, and I'm just sitting all day on the computer or something, I feel like my brain function and my mood and things like that are getting affected. So when I have more activities, whether it's some exercise or some just walking around or doing things and like that, I feel more energized and I feel my mood is much better. I don't think that really needs any proof or explanation. It's an obvious fact that I hope most people know that. So if you do too much activity, and that causes some issues, obviously, if you are, for example, an athlete or you do some sort of physical labor and you create too much tension in your body with that work, so you need to rest in a balanced way to balance that activity. So there should be a balance between rest or sleep and activity, and like sleeping, for example. Another thing, so many people, scientists, they're trying to kind of standardize this and say, okay, everybody needs 8 hours of sleep. It's becoming famous. But again, that's also like the diet thing. I know people, for example, I had a friend I knew, he was a very advanced meditator for many years. He would like sleep like 3 hours a day, and he was always relaxed. Because he was very advanced. Because if your mind is balanced and relaxed, still, and you're not all the time reacting to external stimuli, your body will be much more relaxed, and you won't be wasting so much energy, life force, and then you need less sleep. And there are a lot of people that even if they sleep 10 hours a day, they're still tired. But the sleep also needs to be balanced, because when you if you listen to your body and to the nature, you see sometimes your body says, okay, I just need to sleep 6-7 hours a day. If you force yourself out of boredom or whatever, depression or something, to just sleep more, you'll see you'll actually lose more energy in some way. You wake up with a kind of groggy mood. For whole day you're like in a groggy mood. So you gotta find your sweet spot, that how much sleep you really need. And that happens only if you have regular sleep hours. So if you go to sleep one night at 10, another night at 12, another time at 1 p.m. and a.m., sorry, and then wake up at different times, your body will be messed up. Like it cannot find its like rhythm. So when you balance it and then you listen to your body, you'll see that let's say if you decided every night I will go to bed at 11, and then you notice what time your body wakes up naturally, that's likely amount of sleep that you need.
What about afternoon naps?
I think like short naps, actually, power naps are very good,
Right.
especially if you're like a meditator or you do some sort of practice which you kind of put yourself in that between waking and sleeping state, that's very refreshing. And most people have, I think, this experience that sometimes you take like a 15-20 minutes nap, and it gives you such a good amount of rest and energy that you're energized for 2-3 hours, uh, while that sleep might not even do that, because that's a state of like theta brain waves, which is highly relaxing, and you are kind of not completely sleeping and not completely like awake. That's very refreshing. It's like a meditative thing.
I think that that's really true. This is something that I discovered as well, and I realized while we're talking about it that I kind of fell into this practice after I had adopted meditation and gained some more significant sort of balance in my life. That I started to feel compelled to take an afternoon nap, and this happened during COVID actually, because I was working from home a lot, and so it's easier to take an afternoon nap when you're working at home. And I realized after a while that I really wasn't sleeping during this time period. I'd always set myself an alarm for a half hour, like anyhow. I realized I never really slept. I just kind of went into, I just kind of like did some my deep breathing and clearing of tension and relaxation and stuff like that, and just kind of slip into this liminal space. And gosh, I just got so much out of it, and it just has become like a regular thing. So I think there's something to that.
Yeah. Yeah, in the yoga, there is a specific practice that's called yoga nidra.
Mm.
I love this practice, and I talked about it here and there. I'm planning to create some material on that also. It's so powerful. Like it's a conscious relaxation on all levels, like mentally, emotionally, physically. It gives you such a powerful rest, and it's such a powerful practice that can lead even to might lead to healing for legal reasons,
Mm-hmm.
and so on. And it's also a powerful meditation and a spiritual practice. There's a lot of data on that. The main book, which is the authentic source for that practice, is called Yoga Nidra by Swami Satyananda Saraswati, who was actually the person who created this method in the way that is practiced.
So, since we're talking about sleep, we're right on the edge. Um, what are your thoughts on dreaming and the dreamscape? I know there's some idea. Some people believe that there's something very significant here in dreams, by achieving a lucid state in dreaming that we accomplish something. What's your perspective on that?
Well, we have different states of consciousness. Different traditions have explained this in different ways, but in the yogic way, they consider four states of consciousness, which is like wakefulness, dreaming, deep sleep, and the state which is beyond the three. So dreaming is one of those states which can also be experienced consciously when you are dreaming and you know that you're dreaming, especially if you're a meditator. After a few years, that might happen to you, especially if you practice meditations which work more with awareness, like for example Buddhist practices, vipassana, and those kind of practices, which you kind of learn to witness your thoughts and separate yourself from your thoughts. Then you see that the thoughts are not you. They're just this old data recycling, or the sense input that you receive during the day, and they go to your subconscious mind, which is like, I believe, over 99% of our awareness, our mind, is the subconscious. We barely know really what's happening. Most of it is like subconscious, unconscious. So during the day, things that happen, we experience it in a dream. And yes, there is something that can be said about prophetic dreams or things like that, but I believe that's only very, very small percentage of the dreams. But the function of dreaming is mostly to balance your mind in some way. During the day, your friend, your spouse, your boss says something, you become angry, you don't react, you don't let go of that emotion. It goes back to your subconscious mind. In the dream, it pops up, and then you can experience it to, process it. If that dreaming doesn't happen, I think people can go really crazy within a few days. That's a very important thing, actually. As a matter of fact, in the yogic sciences and in the Tibetan Buddhism, there are techniques that they use to use the dreaming process as a process of releasing your mental baggage, karma, things like that, to clear your mind from those data, the conflicts, the paradoxes, the thoughts. And it's very powerful. If you learn to do it, you can actually use dreaming time as a kind of meditation time. But obviously it's not something you can achieve over a week or something. But getting into like prophetic dreams and things like that, which I believe that's what you were asking about, like lucid dreaming and so on. Well, there are various ideas, for example, Carl Jung and people like that, they have a amazing amount of work on dreams and symbols that you see in dream. And I believe dreams can be a very good way to see what's going on actually in your life, and how is your karma, your programming is playing out right now. When you see you have a lot of dreams involved with anger, for example, you can interpret that and understand a lot about yourself right now. Why am I having a lot of anger, suppressed anger? It can be even related to those Ayurvedic Chinese medicine principles, like is it related to my liver? Because definitely I have noticed this. If I consume something that might cause a lot of heat and tension in my liver, there is a possibility I could have angry dreams at night. So everything is related, like it's holistic, you know. So finally, there are some prophetic dreams that happens once in a while to some people, which can be some sort of telepathy, you know, from your higher self. So we have the conscious mind, you know, subconscious mind, and the superconscious mind. So some thoughts, some inspirations could be passing through the superconscious to subconscious and to your kind of conscious mind. But that's how much I can talk about it right now.
It's an interesting topic of discussion. I've gone back and forth on it myself over the years. I currently look at it, and you touched on this. How much are we dreaming while we're awake, our waking state, and how much of it is because during the day, we'll refer to that as our imagination or sometimes daydreaming if we zone out enough. I think a lot of this is just the stream of associations that's like always running in our mind, and it's part of our subjective overlay, and so it clouds our version of reality throughout the day is kind of clouded with this subjective stuff that's just kind of churning over, that some of it's from our instinctive center, from our subconscious or whatnot. And then when we're asleep, it's the same thing. So when I think of dreaming, first I think about how do I deal with my dreaming during the day, but then at the same time, there's that experience. If you had the experience of lucid dreaming before, like accidentally, or if you tried to work towards it, you can't help but walk away from that feeling like there's something to that, to try and have that kind of self-awareness occur within that state. So you also talk about sexual balance in your book. What is your perspective on that? What does that mean?
Yeah, again, if we compare the ideas of modern medicine to holistic traditional medicine, they don't agree on things. Like modern medicine, they don't believe really in such a thing as like you lose energy with sexual activities and such. But I personally think that's stupid, because if you study deeply about it, it's like explained everywhere. If you go to the um, shamanic traditions all around the world, they they believe about that you need to create that balance, especially for people who are doing certain spiritual processes intensely. And that's not something that applies to most people, but I'm just putting it out there. But it's there in Hinduism, in Buddhism. You see definitely the monks. There's a reason that they avoid those kind of behavior and so on and such. So definitely from the perspective of Chinese medicine, Ayurveda, traditional like Unani medicine, different traditions, definitely with sexual activity, you can lose your life force. But the balance is important, because just by holding back and suppressing your desires or something, nothing spiritual is going to happen to you, first of all. And it actually creates issues within the system. And by overindulging in sexual activity, according to opinion of those systems at least, which is extensively studied, and according to what I see in my own system with my sensitivity to my inner happenings, I have noticed that definitely you can lose your life force. So those systems, Chinese medicine and so on, they say like overindulging in sexual activity can reduce your lifespan or like weaken your body. And even in some not Eastern systems, um, in some cultures, they also believed in that, like somebody wanted to go in a boxing championship or something, the coaches would tell them like, oh, you gotta avoid like ejaculating or something for a month or so because it builds energy within you and so on. So whether you lose energy or not, in my opinion and opinion of the traditional systems and ancient wisdom, you definitely lose. But you need to lose some amount of that energy, for men especially, because your body is producing that energy. And unless you are a different type of person, you are, let's say, deeply creative person, that you channel all that energy into something, or you're physically very active, you're a martial art person, you regularly practice something and things like that, or you do like intensive yogic practices under guidance of a guru or so on, then it's not the right thing to restrict yourself. That's not good, because that energy is being generated. If you don't channel it, let's say, upward, that doesn't mean that the semen is going to go to your head or something. It means the subtle energy. If you don't channel it that way into different areas of your life, like I talk creativity, yoga, blah blah, then it needs to be in a balanced way used for creating that balance within the system, the pleasure or the balance that happens with the orgasm. And it's actually very balancing for brain and nervous system when you kind of create that orgasmic energy, and it creates a balance in your brain and so on. So to conclude, you lose energy with sexual activity, but if you lose too much, it's bad. And then what is too much? It could be different for different people. For one person, maybe one orgasm a day is balanced. For some other people, maybe every 3 days is balanced. But when you pay attention to your body, then you can again see what is the balance that you need. Because like when I look at my body and energy system, I know that more than a specific number of times in a week or something translates to less intensity and energy, endurance, or even in traditional sense, immunity in me. And this is extensively in a scientific way explained in the yogic systems and Ayurveda. Like the modern medicine, it's a materialistic medicine. They just touch the surface of things. But in the Chinese system, in Taoism, in yoga, they talk about different levels of energy. It's like when the food converts to this in your body, and then in Ayurveda there are 7 layers of things that happen in the body when you eat the food, and the seventh thing in the body is the sexual energy. So like Ayurveda and yoga, they believe like every 40 morsel of food that you eat creates uh, 1 drop of blood, and 40 drops of blood creates 1 drop of the sperm, something like that. I might be wrong about the details. So then the sperm, which comes from bone marrow, according to Ayurveda and some other systems, is the essence, is the atomic energy of the body. So yogis and Taoists, with a specific methods that you need to learn from a guru in a tantric systems and so on, they can kind of transmute that energy to achieve like higher states of consciousness and even spiritual powers and so on.
So there's so much in there that I wanna respond to. You were talking about in Ayurveda. So there's seven levels that food goes through, 7 transformations that it goes to, and it ends up at as a sexual substance as the 7th. I know you're familiar with Gurdjieff in that he loves to talk about the law of 7. Everything goes through this process of 7, like the musical scale. And the first food, which is ordinary food, food and water, hamburgers and stuff, it goes through 7 stages, and it ends up it ends up as semen or sexual material in the body. And then he talks about the second food, which is air, and a third food, which is impressions. And they all go through and provide shocks to create other things happening, and only happen with special efforts. But that first octave of ordinary food, that's the one that we have that we don't need it. Nature takes us to that. We get that with nature. Food automatically goes through and gets recycled into sexual energy for us. And then it's the other things that we do with our breath. If we start moving beyond what nature just takes us to, then we can start to transform that energy into something else. So I think there's a lot in there. And another thing that you talk about is, so this always comes back to the food question for me. The same reason that we're limiting our food, we end up talking about an appetite. It's our appetite. And my experience is with the right kind of work and meditative practice that your appetites just naturally change, right? Like if you go like immediately and just start trying to change your appetites, it's a struggle.
Yes.
And it's the same thing with sexuality. If you're like, oh, okay, if you're a 16-year-old kid and you're masturbating 3 times a day and you're like, okay, I'm going to stop this right now. Or I'm going to stop chasing women. You're going to have resistance. It's going to be a struggle. It's going to be hard to do that. Whereas people who go into monks and yogis, when you go through a system like that, can experience a change which actually changes those appetites.
Yeah, I quoted this recently. There was a great yogi, Swami Vivekananda, who was the first yogi that came to US to bring the message of yoga. And then he was talking about this yogic practices and all this. And then somebody in the crowd stands and asks him, yeah, Swamiji, these things that you're talking about are like really cool, but like we Westerners, we have a lot of like bad habits, and we drink and we smoke and we indulge in all the pleasures, and our sleep is not good and all those things. So we have a lot of addictions. Can we really take advantage of all these teachings that you're giving to us? And Vivekananda looks at the guy and says, you do not need to give up your addictions. After you start practicing yoga, your addictions will give you up. So I totally agree with what you said, and this two needs to go hand in hand. We try as much as we can to create a balance in the diet and sexuality and so on, and at the same time, it's very critical to have those authentic spiritual practices, so they help each other. And then what you said happens after you progress. That compulsive nature of you starts to diminish gradually.
Yeah, and when you talk about channeling that energy, I heard this great way of describing this in a Western context recently, because I think we almost need it more in a Western context. In the East, you find these ideas are still there, and in the West, we've like really like grown away from them. But one thing I heard recently is that you have to channel eros into agape. In other words, you take that energy that's like laterally focused on all these things outside of us and channel it in an upward to a higher kind of love, in an upward direction towards God or whatever's up there, the divine.
Yeah, there are different ways that this can be looked upon. Like the common way is, as I said, what is that saying? They say like empty mind is like the playground of devil or something like that.
Yeah.
Because when you don't engage yourself is in something productive, your energy might end up all in those like animalistic things within you. But when you have some passion that you follow, and especially if it's something like art, something deep which gives you in a state of flow, and kind of puts you in the zone and those kind of things which you are really deeply engaged in. That's one way of channeling. It's not a yogic way, that's one way. The more powerful way is actually what you said, which is not something which you can induce consciously, but when you fall in love, whether that's in when you fall in love with a person, and that's also one form of channeling it. That's actually one sort of creating balance. When your sexuality is happening with one person and you're in love with that person and all those kinds of stuff, then you're kind of channeling it for uh, naturally through that purpose. And then the third way, actually, before I go to the third way, I mentioned love that can be also towards divine, a divine incarnation or Jesus or somebody. When you're deeply in love with that divine incarnation, image, symbol, that also channels the energy, upward. And then the finally is the yogic way, which is using some techniques to kind of channel the energy, which is something that you need to learn from proper channels and gurus, the third system. So actually, Hindus, they believe if you are a very like really good husband and wife and you have love and harmony between you and you only think about your spouse and wife and sexual activity is limited to that, that's also one sort of celibacy. So the other one could be towards a divine incarnation. You are, for example, in love with Jesus all the time, you're thinking about Jesus, praying and so on. You kind of channelize your energy. And the third way is to channel your energy by really actually channeling it. If you become a yogi, if you learn the proper methods to how to shift the energy, because we are an energetic being, we have meridians, energy channels and so on, and if you can really learn how to shift that energy from being into the lower chakras and sexual organs and so on and bring it higher, bring it to your heart, bring it to your brain, then you transform it. But that's not as easy as we talk about it. It really needs a lot of training and proper guidance.
Satan finds work for idle hands. I think that was the saying that we were trying to think of.
Yeah.
So we're getting into the discussion of the divine here, and I want to ask you some questions about your metaphysics and what you think the world is and what the universe is and what God is. And can we start with Ayurveda? You're talking about Ayurveda. Can you explain what that is?
Ayurveda is science of life, and it's not right to call it Indian system because it's not a universal system, but it's part of the Vedas. We have 4 Vedas, and Veda basically means kind of knowledge, science. So in the ancient land, India and those areas, there have been many, many sciences that for most people, they don't even have any idea of those sciences existing. It's mind blowing. But like one of those Vedas is Ayurveda. And these sciences, like many of the ancient sciences, compared to what some of the modern sciences are, they have not learned these things by necessarily trial and error. They were rishis, which mean seers. Why they call those like enlightened beings seers? Because they have certain level of consciousness and ability to see the truth and explain it. So those rishis, like in Ayurveda, um, they saw those principles of health and life and diet and so on, and they wrote it down. And Ayurveda comes down from that tradition, and Ayurveda itself comes from like one philosophy, one of the systems of philosophy in India, which is called Sankhya, which explains the universe in a specific way as well. It's a kind of complex cosmology, but that's the answer to your question about Ayurveda. But there's a ton of data on that on internet.
Is it related to the Shaivite tradition in India?
Well, Shaivism, it's kind of a broad term. In a way, it's very related, but also Ayurveda doesn't really involve. I cannot say doesn't, but it doesn't really much involve with deities and those kind of things. It's basically about principles of life. So it's not a lot about those things because, like, the Shaivism, Shaktism, Vaishnavism, and other traditions of Hinduism, Buddhism, and so on, they talk mostly about the freedom from the cycle. But Ayurveda is mostly about how to create happiness and balance and health so you can enjoy, and obviously that's also needed for spiritual progress, because if you are sick, then it's very difficult to make spiritual progress.
No, that's very helpful. It helps me understand your book. It sounds like very much an Ayurvedic kind of work. Would that be accurate?
I guess indirectly you can say that. I don't really put it in that traditional structure, but the principles that I explained there, I think all of it matches the Ayurvedic principles.
There's a good quote that you have in your book from Edgar Cayce. Prayer is talking to God, meditation is listening. I love that quote. So what is your metaphysics?
So you asking about what I believe about, like, the cosmology, theology things?
Yeah.
Well, that's if I talk about those things from my own point of view, that might not be the best thing to do, because a lot of it comes from my own spiritual experiences and so on. But I relate mostly to Hinduism, but again, Hinduism is so complex, so broad. It's like there's like 6 main systems of philosophy in Hinduism, and they are all actually true, even though when you study them you think some of them are rejecting the other one. Like, for example, Buddha said there is no self, there is no, like, God as we believe in that way, but the other system says actually there is only God, nothing else exists, but they all talking about the same thing. But that's a complex mystical topic. But I believe in those systems. Majority of what resonates with me is a system that's called Kashmir Shaivism, or Trika, and that's very much majorly in line with other things that I talk about, which is Vedanta. So Kashmir Shaivism, Vedanta, and Sankhya, which I mentioned, they're very much the same. They just look at different aspects of reality. But the basic principles of Vedanta, especially in Kashmir Shaivism, which aligns with all religions and all spiritual traditions, is that there is a fundamental substance, nature, field, which is behind everything, which some people call God, Brahman, Shiva, quantum field, whatever. And that field is actually not separate from you, and you are actually it. You are not separate from it. And the only thing that keeps you separate from reality, from the ultimate truth, is your own mind. And this mind is synonymous with the word Maya, which is that cosmic illusion, the simulation. People talk about it. We're living in a simulation, you know. because your mind interrupts the reality. If you could transcend your mind, you could become a Buddha. As a matter of fact, the word Buddha, very funny, it means one who is beyond intellect. So Buddha is beyond mind. That's why he's so wise. He sees the truth. That's why he doesn't suffer. That's why he taught the path of becoming free from suffering. So as our pure nature, we can call it God nature, Christ consciousness, or simply consciousness, pure consciousness. We are already free. We are already perfect and divine. Actually, we don't need to achieve enlightenment or make a spiritual progress. Actually, we don't need to go anywhere. Everything is perfect. But because of the illusion that is created by mind, we are in some sort of simulation that we have created for ourselves. And unless we transcend that, we cannot become free. So again, this is a very vast topic. In yogic system, they explore different ways which you can go through to become free from that. Like just talking about one path which resonates with you, I think, with your book and stuff, is that transformation of energy and channelizing the energy. And when you kind of achieve certain level of mastery in your energy and mind, then you can achieve the state of no mind. And in that no mind state, you can achieve the higher states of consciousness or different stages of samadhi, and then finally become free. While in Vedanta path and even in Buddhist path, it's more about elevation of consciousness. You don't necessarily have to deal with the energy and your body and so on. You can go through path of like self-inquiry, like contemplation, introspection, and then from that consciousness, by just contemplation alone, in some way we can say, and these terms can all cause misunderstanding if I don't explain them, but just to wrap up. So yeah, you can use your body and energy to get there, and you can also use only your power of contemplation and awareness.
Definitely. We cannot see reality, that there's some sort of illusion. That idea of Maya, Zoroastrianism calls it the druge or the lie. It's just so I think you have to dig into the Gospels enough, you can see it was an idea that Christ was talking about that has been lost. But I think that's like coming back too. Like when the movie The Matrix came out, it's like just there's been a revival of people in the West like getting hip to this idea that we're living in an illusion. And I mean, once you grant that, and I think it's pretty easy. It's pretty easy. C.S. Lewis talks about this, how everyone in every culture, everyone has an idea of how things are, and then also an idea of how things ought to be. And the fact that we all have that, it's like almost a natural part of the brain. Things ought to be a different way than they are, leads us to this question of why reality is what it is, and that we're not really seeing the real reality. And then you either talk about, well, there's something beyond it that is that there's a reason for this, which that's the direction that I tend to go, that there's some sort of higher divinity or something created this, or there's a purpose, we're fulfilling some purpose, and we need to fight our way back to that pure state. But if you grant that there is no reason, and it's just a chaotic mess, and we can never know the truth, that's an ideology too. That's the ideology of neo-Kantian postmodernism and stuff like that. And atheism would probably have that idea too. And to me, it's just depressing. And I don't know what for sure is out there, but I feel there is something out there, and something in the heart says that we should work towards that, at least finding out what it is. So you're a musician too.
Yes. Yeah, I play this highly spiritual sacred instrument, which comes from ancient Sufi tradition, which predates Islam. And tambur, it's called tambur. It belongs to ancient land of Persia. Some archaeologists, they have estimated it to be like over 5,000 years old. And it comes from this tradition which is called Ahl Haq, which means people of truth, or Yarsan, another name for them, which I believe it's related to ancient Zoroastrianism and so on. And Zoroastrianism is very related to Hinduism. Everything is related.
Mhm.
So this
Mhm.
instrument is used in the gatherings for inducing some sort of state of trance and meditativeness, and they have their own specific tunes, like Indian ragas, that they have raga sacred melodies that is used for different gatherings, and then it has a different energy. And there is not so much written science on this tradition about the music of it, like exists, for example, in Indian music, which is there's tremendous amount of written knowledge about it. But we also have a different system of music in Iran, Persian classical system of music, and basically it divides to seven, we can say scales, seven modes of the music, and these seven uh, systems kind of correlate with the seven states of consciousness in Sufism and in Persian poetry. It's described as seven realms or seven cities, seven stages of spiritual growth, seven chakras, are all related. Seven chakras, after all, are seven dimensions within ourselves, in our microcosm. So yeah, in ancient Persia, the music is very, very spiritual and meditative and healing. And we even have like some classical texts written by people like, um, Abu Ali Sina, or called Avicenna in West, who is one of the founders of and fathers of medicine, who was like a super genius. The guy knew every single science that existed. And I think he was like kind of like a rishi, but maybe that's too much to say about him. I don't know, but he wrote like papers that if this person has this disease, play this kind of music for him, play this song, play that kind of stuff. But tambur, for me, I love improvising. When I play, a lot of time I just forget myself. I feel like the universe is playing through me. And in according to Indian systems of music and all spiritual traditions, the whole universe is made of sound, vibration, and these sounds are some methods to kind of resonate with the highest vibration gradually through those seven things that I mentioned, seven stages. Rise your vibration through your chakras, through your system, to get you there. And to end this part of my speaking about this, Rumi has a poem, very interesting, and he actually mentions tambur there as an example. He says, in Persian, this poem is like this, just to bring the energy of Rumi out. I'll say it in Persian. He says like, ما همه اجزای آدم بوده ایم در بهشت این لحنها بشنوده ایم ناله تنبور و برخی سازها اندکی ماند بدان آواسا, which translates loosely to, we have all been heavenly, and in heaven we have heard all these tunes. The sound of some instruments like tambour, they reminds us of that heavenly status. So they kind of remind us, they bring out those feelings that at one point we were like divine, and then now we're here. So the music is reminding us that's your true divine nature. Don't run after these temporary things too much.
That's awesome. And you've got some of your music on Bandcamp, right?
Um, I have a few pieces I put on YouTube and on SoundCloud. I have
SoundCloud.
played so much, but I only have uploaded like maybe 5, 6 pieces. But I'm planning to put more pieces. I'm trying to record with like a higher quality equipment so it sounds better.
Okay. But can people find you on SoundCloud? SoundCloud?
Yeah, it's.
Is
I
this
think
name?
if you search my name, Isaac Sian, you'll see it. But also on my YouTube channel, Greatness Glory, there is a playlist for. It's called My Music, I think.
Okay. Awesome. I encourage people to go check that out. I've listened to some of it before and I really dug it. I think it's very cool. So I'm excited that you're talking about doing some more of that. We should talk about collaborating on some music sometimes. I like to do lots of studio production type stuff. Maybe you could send me some files and I could do something with it and we could
Yeah, that sounds cool. Yeah, we
create
can talk
something.
about it.
Yeah, create something funky, transcendental and funky.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, I have one final question, and then we'll call it a wrap. So, you're stranded on a desert island, and you can only have one book for the rest of your life there on or for however long you're going to be on the desert island. What is the one book that you would choose?
Okay. Well, there's so many amazing books that are kind of equally amazing. But if I have to choose one book, it's likely going to be Bhagavad Gita because that's one of scriptures that covers almost all dimensions and different paths of spirituality and many important topics of spiritual growth and self-realization and so on. That's why there have been thousands of interpretations by great saints and people who have written on that book alone.
That's a good choice. I was thinking with this question, I thought that, and then I thought, so Bhagavad Gita is part of the Mahabharata, which is huge. Like no one's read all of the Mahabharata because it's so big. So maybe if I'm on a
Yeah.
desert island, I'll take the whole Mahabharata because I'm gonna have all this time, and so you get the Bhagavad Gita along with it. Get more bang for your buck that way. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you, Isaac. I sure appreciate you doing the show here, getting to talk with you again. I encourage everyone to go check out your book as well, Art of Balance, Guidelines on Achieving Holistic Well-Being and Happiness. Everything in it is good. It's all good stuff.
Thank you. And I have made a audiobook version of it. It's on my website. If you go on my website, greatnessglory.com, and you put your email address in that newsletter thing, it will take you to a page to download the audiobook of it for free. But if you want the
Awesome.
physical book, it's on Amazon. You can order.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you so much, Isaac.
Thank you very much.
Right.
Thank you.
Take care.